This is David Kurtz for TPM Media. It's Wednesday, September 3rd, 2008, and we're reporting from the site of the Republican National Convention in St. Paul. You know, before I got here this week, I had personally been pretty resistant to the idea that this was a generational election, a sea change election. But after spending a week in Denver, but more particularly after being here in St. Paul, I'm starting to think there's some real truth to that. We were just in a panel discussion sponsored by the Politico this morning that featured former House Majority Leader Tom DeLay, former Pennsylvania Senator Rick Santorum, current Virginia Congressman Eric Cantor, and the National Review's Rich Lowry. And I'm old enough to remember when the kinds of discussions that the Democrats had internally were all about how to overcome the odds that were stacked against them, and how if with better messaging, or if they could just get through to the media, or some other external obstacle could be overcome, then finally the Democrats could prevail. And that was true of the Democrats throughout the 80s and into the 90s. But now it's clearly the Republicans that are having those conversations internally. Today's panel discussion was almost a little surreal because there were talk about what are the things that cost the Republicans power. You know, from 2000 until now, the sea change in Congress that has occurred, what's caused that? And the panelists, except for Tom DeLay, repeatedly went back to the corruption issue, which was sort of surreal having Tom DeLay sit there while corruption was identified as one of the main problems that hampered Republicans at the polls. After the panel, I talked with the National Review's Rich Lowry, and he and I are about the same age, and he too can recall when these were the sorts of internal discussions that Democrats had, not Republicans. Take a look.
You're always, as a movement that's on, out of power at the moment, you're always going to have this debate, and this is what you had in the left, whether you need to kind of update, modernize, get fresher, or just mobilize your own people. And left for a long time was just mobilize your own people.
Lowry is right to some extent that the dynamic we're talking about here is just a function of the Republicans being out of power, and that the party out of power is always sort of trying to figure out, how did we get in this mess, how do we get out of this mess, who's to blame, what went wrong. But it's really pervasive here, the sense that there's these external factors that the Republicans are the victims of that they don't have any control over. One is Democrats have way much more money than we do. Two is that they've been much better able to adapt new technology for use in politics than the GOP has. And the third thing is that the Republicans have fallen behind the Democrats in building up sort of a policy and political infrastructure to support their election campaigns. I talked with Rick Santorum briefly after the panel this morning, and he makes the somewhat implausible argument that Democrats now have more money in politics than Republicans do. Take a look.
I tip my hat to the left. They have taken the wealth that many on the left have gained as a result of the new economy that we see in America today, around the world today, and they have reinvested it in what they believe in, which is government. And you don't, when you reinvest in government, you don't pay more taxes. When you reinvest in government, you give money to organizations that believe in big government. You give money to organizations that believe in growing the size and scope of and control, in my opinion, of the government of the United States. And they've done that. They've gone out and invested and created a huge amount of infrastructure. Billionaires who have dedicated themselves to building a political infrastructure. Candidly, I don't think the left is adapting the technology quicker. They just have more money to take advantage of it.
Tom DeLay took issue with Rich Lowry's recent column in which he wrote about some of the underlying political issues that have so damaged the Republicans. Corruption and the Iraq War both came to mind. I asked Lowry about that after the panel, and he talked a little bit about the dearth of ideas on the GOP side.
Congressman DeLay could talk about some initiatives they passed in 2005, but none of them were really big imagination-catching sort of ideas, and I think that's what we on the right lack at the moment and need to develop.
So as I said at the top, I've been skeptical all campaign about this being a sea change election until I saw more evidence. But after being in St. Paul and hearing what the Republicans are debating and talking about internally, and the baggage that they're still carrying and can't quite shed yet, I'm starting to believe that maybe this really is a sea change election. We'll have more reports from you throughout the day here from St. Paul. This is David Kurtz for TPM Media.